episode of Lessons of the Woods by 10 Point Whitetails. I'm your host, Dylan Porter, and again, Kyle is not with us this week because he's still doing whatever he was doing last time, but we're doing part 2 with the guys from Haunted Outdoors. So with me I have Seth, Eric, and Jordan, not listed in order of importance, just in the way they are on my screen. Well, actually, the way they are on my screen is 2 of them have their wife's name, and then Jordan's on the ball, so...
Jordan's legit. It's really me.
Jordan's a techie guy. He's always he's good with that stuff.
My wife wouldn't let me come on unless I used her name.
That's reasonable.
All the other girls out there know that he's taken.
Yeah. Made sure I did this the entire time.
It's actually super glued onto his finger.
For those of you on the audio version of the podcast, he was holding up his wedding ring. And has been the entire time.
Yes.
So where we left off, we were talking food plots and food plot practices. Now, I would like to know, what methods are you guys employing on your property for deer management? Because if you go through and look at some of your guys' hunts, you guys are shooting phenomenal deer. And we know it's not all food, it's not all location. Location helps, but a lot of it is management, because you guys are obviously getting these bucks past that 1.5 and 2.5-year-old mark, where personally I'd say 90% of the bucks harvested in the state are 2.5 and under.
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I would say 85-90% are probably under 2.5.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
You know,
which is frustrating, because when you see those memes, I saw one today, we briefly talked about it, but it's like, you can't tell how old a buck is when he's in a can of chili. Yeah, because if you've never seen a 3.5 to 4.5-year-old whitetail, you don't know how big they are. A 3.5 and 4-year-old whitetail in Minnesota should easily be 250 plus pounds live weight.
Live weight, yeah.
Get a lot more meat off of that deer.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
A lot of chili. Yeah, you want meat, shoot an older deer.
Yeah. And especially if you're grinding up to put in a chili, doesn't matter how tough it is, because it is ground up into chili.
So I hated that. Like when someone go ahead and shoot whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But don't say, oh, this one's going to be super tender. This one's going to be good. I have shot deer in remote places where there was no food plots, 3.5, 4.5-year-old deer. I guess I just know how to cook.
Well, the biggest thing that people do, and we've had a podcast about this too, a lot of people like to take the skin off their deer and let them hang for 3 days. You can't do that. Doesn't matter how old your deer is. It's going to taste like crap because you're letting it dry out in our late October, 60-degree weather. I'm sorry, it's not good meat anymore. Take the skin off.
Yeah, we don't
put it in the freezer.
Yeah, we don't let ours hang. I mean, unless we have to, because whatever circumstances there are. But if we can get that hide off immediately, because our main reason was it's so much easier to skin a warm deer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Rather than one that, and you're dealing with the stiff legs and whatever.
And I think like the whole hanging the deer, because I think like growing up, like our grandpas and even our dads, like that's just what they did. It's like, you just leave the deer hang for the week, If
the skin's on, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But when the skin's off, I went to a friend of mine's shop and he had the deer skun out in his shop with birds flying around in his open door shop. It's like, well, your meat's just not going to be good. Sorry. But we're getting off topic. Learn how to cook, guys. Yes, butchers hang beef for a long time, but they're doing it in a controlled environment with humidity and temperature. We're not doing that with our deer outside, so don't do it.
Beef have a different, enzyme or a bacteria that actually breaks down the meat that deer venison do not have. But anyways, land management.
Well, how are you guys getting your deer so big or so old? What are you guys doing?
Seth, you want to start us off?
You're a great example of this, yeah.
So, but our farm, we've had that for almost 30 years now. And, we're in what I consider one of the best areas in the state, for trophy caliber deer. The genetics are there. They've always been there. But when we got our farm, almost 30 years ago, we would never see any mature deer. You would see a lot of 1.5 years, 2.5 years. And if you saw a 3-year-old, that was like a giant, like, oh my God,
Mm-hmm.
And it went on like that. And that's just how hunting was, you just shot a buck. Everybody went out, they wanted a buck, it didn't matter if it was a spike, if it was a 10-point or whatever, you just get your buck, right? Well, after, I don't know, maybe 10 years of that, everybody, all the neighboring landowners, we didn't really know each other. We knew of each other. We didn't, really have a, good, didn't know each other personally real well. Everybody kind of was like, we're sick of shooting all these small bucks. Everybody had shot. I mean, how many 6-pointers do you got to shoot, before you're satisfied, right? And we had a couple landowners that went around and they talked to everybody within 5 miles of us. And I was like, hey, we want to, that was kind of when the QDM, quality deer management, was kind of coming on the scene. We should try this in this area, where let's just try to set a minimum of like 130 inches. Just take your best guess of what you think a 130-inch buck is. And in our area, 130-inch buck is typically going to be a 3-year-old or older deer, which a 3-year-old deer for anybody in Minnesota, I mean, I shouldn't say anybody, but 95% of the people, hunters in Minnesota, that's a trophy caliber deer. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So we got everybody together and said, all right, let's just try this. 130-inch minimum. Obviously for like kids and first-time hunters, there was no restrictions. Just shoot whatever, And everybody has, some of them old timers in their party that they aren't going along with this, which is fine. You knew everybody wasn't going to come in.
Why did those guys always have mustard in their beard?
But so anyways, we got everybody together and kind of started our own, we called it like the Spruce Grove Whitetail Management, kind of made our own little chapter, I guess, of it, and kind of wrote our own rules, and there weren't really rules, they were kind of just guidelines,
Mm-hmm.
And we actually had like a banquet at the end of the year where everybody get together and bring in the the horns and stuff from the deer they shot and everything, and they'd have like a big doe contest and everything. And the great thing about it, not only did it create bigger deer, but it got everybody to know each other and got everybody together. And I mean, some of the people up there, I mean, they're some of my best friends, that I talk to them honestly about as much as I talk to these two or my wife, Yeah, I know, right, Eric? But it was funny because it was after the first year of doing this, we had the banquet at the end of the year, and guys were like, oh my God, they're bringing in nice bucks, not giants, but 130, 140-inch bucks, and they're like, I can't believe this worked like the first year. And it's like, okay, well, what worked is you actually hunted for more than 30 minutes. You didn't shoot that first forky or 6-pointer that walked out. You actually hunted for 4 or 5 days. So these bucks were always there, maybe not as many of them, but they're always there. So they actually hunted longer. Well, once people started seeing some of the results, which they thought were these fast action results, they really weren't, they were just hunting longer. Then it started taking off like wildfire. And within 5 years, it was nothing for, like our property, we would shoot at least 1 wall hanger. I mean, I think our best year we shot 3, so, I mean, that's just on 160 acres. And it seemed like every property around us that, within 2-3 miles, they're shooting at least 1 wall hanger a year. And now it's to the point where, it's just spreading everywhere up there. And our little management, group or whatever is bleeding into other ones that have started or have been around. And it's just insane where you can go out and sit there and have a 3.5-year-old buck walk by you, 130-inch buck that you normally would be like, oh God, I got to shoot this thing. You're like, it's walking to the neighbor property and hey, they're not going to shoot that deer. They're going to let it go. And then next year it's going to be a 150, 160, So once I think people start seeing just a little bit of result, that's when it takes off. But it's the hard part is to get people started,
Mm-hmm.
And I think once you could get everybody on the same page and say, hey, let's just try this just for a couple of years. They see any bit of a result, and then it just takes off. You don't have to do anything with it. And then you can kind of create your own management goals. Like in our section, we talk to the 3 different landowners in our section, and we say, okay, how many deer do we think that we are housing like in that, 640 acres? And we decide, okay, well, let's try to cut this many does out of the herd for this year. Well, one of the landowners, they own half the section. We own a quarter of it, and the other owns a quarter of it. So we divide that number of does, whatever we decide we want to take, up according to land size,
Mhm.
And then by muzzleloader season, end of muzzleloader season, if one of the landowners, they haven't filled their quota, then it's a free for all for everybody else to fill that, and we all communicate with each other. And once the quota's filled, that's it. And it's been working great. We got our buck to doe ratio. I would say at one point it was pushing 30-1, does to bucks.
Oof.
It was during the rut, it sucked because you didn't see any movement because the bucks didn't have to move. Well, now we're, getting those doe numbers back down, and now that buck to doe ratio is getting more balanced. And I mean, the past 3 years during the rut has just been, honestly, like, I would enjoy just going out there and watching, not even having a weapon, just watching like nice bucks run around and be
I'll come
deer.
with you. You can watch me.
Yeah.
I'll just
But I mean,
watch
obviously,
me.
not everybody, is in a situation like I was, with the right neighbors and stuff like that. But I mean, we literally started from nothing and built it up. So I mean, if we could do it, anybody can do that. It's just got to take that, the one or two people just to go out, knock on some doors, spread the word, and and it can take off.
The people who've listened to my podcast before, I pitched an idea almost word for word what you just said you guys did, and that's proof it works. It can be done. The sucky thing is it has to start at a local level and not a state level.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Big time.
Yeah, because you could go 10 miles down the road and that just wouldn't work there.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I think our, like we were talking earlier, our management areas are too big. They need to be
More localized. And that's, I
Yeah.
mean, you guys took it so far as to dictate how many does you want harvested in your area. That's just awesome. I applaud you guys. You guys are doing it right. That's the way it should be done, because it's better for the deer herd overall.
So I took a page out of Seth's book. One thing they do that he didn't mention is they eliminated, a lot of people see their neighbor on their hunting land as their rival or somebody they're competing against. And what they do is they work together. I'd never considered this until Seth started showing me that they share trail camera pictures of deer that they're watching grow, and what are we going to do with this one, things like that. And it's just developing a relationship, and hopefully you can find some neighbors that are like-minded and have similar goals. Sometimes you just won't have those neighbors, but my scenario, I've got a few of them. We take pictures back and forth and say, how'd you guys did? And it just kind of eases that tension of, oh, they're going to shoot it, or they're going to get my buck, or if you're all working towards the same thing. That's the fastest way. We talk about food plots and timber management, all that stuff, but the fastest way is to let deer live. That
Absolutely.
live. It's the fastest, most knocking on doors. And again, you're not gonna. That's pretty fortunate that he's got a big landmass there. Most people have a neighbor or two that have no time for that. They want their chili. But just the last few years and just being more open, flinging pictures back and forth, even if it's the freak deer that we've never seen before, and getting people excited about it and being on the same page. It's just immediate progress.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And we see it like this to the point now, like where you're saying, Jordan, how we've developed this relationship with each other, where if the neighbor shoots one of these target bucks, we're all happy.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not just their deer, it's everybody's deer, because that deer lived on all of our properties. We all watched it grow. We all contributed to, creating better habitat and food and making that deer want to live there. Right. So it's like, it's a win in everybody's book. And I had a hunt a couple years ago where I was hunting down on our creek bottom, and our neighbor was actually hunting on the opposite side. We were probably 300-400 yards away from each other, but it was dead quiet down there. And I heard him stop and shoot a buck with his bow, one of the bucks I was after too. And it was just cool to be able to listen to that. Honestly, I bet you I was just as excited as he was. I mean, I was fist pumping in the stand because I knew he drilled that buck. And, it was all high fives and hooting and hollering from everybody after that, as we were excited, like, hey, everything we've all worked for, as a group, happened. Even though it didn't happen on our side of the fence, I was just as happy, and they'd feel the same way, for us, some of the nice deer that I've shot, they come over and, some guys would hang their head, be like, oh, the neighbor's got that deer, but everybody's like, happy for each other, and that's how it should be.
Is there a sense of, well, I mean, I didn't get the target buck this year, but next year we got these 3 young ones that we're all watching. I might get one of them next year.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yep.
That's
So,
just
yeah,
Absolutely.
so talk about culture. Yeah.
I had a complete opposite experience.
somehow I had that
we
vibe. We didn't talk about it, but that's
we
kind of the
had
vibe I
80
had.
acres. We had 80 acres that was butted up to 7 different properties.
Oof.
This was up east central Minnesota, north of Hinckley, and we were able to harvest big deer. We were able to, our average, like we would see 2.5-year-olds, which growing up, if you saw a 2.5-year-old, it was like, oh my God, you should have seen this deer.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my dad shooting a 6-pointer, and we were like, as kids, we just couldn't believe it. We cut the rack off, and my brother and I played hunting in the living room, and that was like our big buck, you know. And then we started. My dad was probably the biggest, like he hated it that we were going to pass up deer. He passed one up, you never know, you might not see another one for the rest of the weekend,
Mm-hmm.
which coming more true with Minnesota. But like, so we had 7 different properties that butted up to our 80, and we had one neighbor out of those 7 that buck managed with us. Luckily, he had 160 acres, so he had like the biggest portion out of all the rest of these. And how we just had to change the way we hunted. We didn't do deer drives anymore. That was like our loved it, because all right, we're gonna sit till 9 and we're gonna start pushing deer. We're gonna see deer, and we're gonna throw some lead.
Mm-hmm.
But then when we were like, all right, mature deer, we were reading like, oh, a lot of them are shot from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. We never sat then. We were pushing deer and making a campfire, eating hot dogs by that time.
Mm-hmm.
So we just changed the way we hunted. We turned the whole center of our woods, we never stepped foot in. The only time we stepped foot in it, I had a food plot in there. I'd go in there in the spring and I planted it. And I had turned that into clover so that I didn't have to go in there every year. And then we'd plant trees. We were planting pine, crabapple, whatever we could. But then we left it alone. We hunted the fringes of our property. And if you look at some of our older videos, I was always literally on the same plot. I had a beautiful setup. You could get in and out. I hunted this one buck and I saw him 3 nights in a row. I got out of my stand, everything, but you just had to change the way you hunted, because our neighbors, they saw it, they were shooting it. They were like, need meat in the freezer. Well, it's like, yeah, you could buy a half a cow or a full cow for the money that you spent on all your hunting gear, shells, everything you just bought this year.
Not even counting processing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so we had to change the way we hunted, and it worked out very well for us. We didn't get a 4.5-year-old every year, but every year we had an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And every year, for me, just seeing a 2.5-year-old deer was like, holy crap. And we had young kids that hunted, and they got, yep, whatever you see you want to shoot, you go ahead. And my belief is always the trophy is in the eye of the beholder.
Mm-hmm.
I have shoulder mounts of deer that these two would never even ever put on the wall. But like my kids now will be like, Dad, can you tell me the story about that one? And I'm like, well, that one's actually pretty cool, because I shot it standing at the foot of your uncle's deer stand as he was climbing up in it. And I shot it and he was all mad, but because he waited for me to take a poop. So we walked out together.
Always a poop in the story.
I'm always gonna have one of those. But yeah, you wait, like we're all, how, like if you ever constipated, get bundled up in your hunting clothes and
yeah,
within minutes. So we were walking out and I'm like, hey, go on without me. Nature's calling. I gotta go back in the house. And he was like, I'll wait. I mean, we didn't see a deer the day before because it was 90-mile-an-hour winds. So he was so mad. I shot this buck, and he's like, I would have had this had I not waited for you. I would have been settled in my stand. I'm like, oh, sucks to be you.
Just as Eric
But it's a deer no one would have on the wall. It's a 2.5-year-old because this was right when we were starting it out. Our thing was we started out, it's got to have a rack. Now, it can't be a small basket 8-pointer because we know it's a 1.5 years. It had to be, a 2.5-year-old deer. And you can see a 2.5-year-old versus a 1.5.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
At
You
least
get those
50
two out on the
pounds for those of you that need the meat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I have a couple 2.5, probably 2 or 3 2.5-year-olds on my wall, shoulder mounted. I've shot bigger deer that I have skull mounts of, but man, I love telling those stories because I don't know. For me, it's the story that goes into it, but we back onto it. We just changed the way we hunted. We knew we could not push the deer. It had to be a safe zone, 365 days out of the year where, okay, and we hunted our fringes. We didn't hunt property lines, but we found different ways to get in, and we hunted in our woods, but we were on the fringes of our center, like whatever you
Core
call it.
areas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
The sanctuary.
our sanctuary.
You're on the edge
Yeah.
of that.
Yep. And we didn't
Yeah.
step foot in there unless we were tracking a deer or planting trees in the spring.
Yeah. Yeah, and one thing too that with our area up there, now that we kind of got the program going, now each property has kind of branched off and created some more, guidelines along with the core ones. And something that we implement on our property is if you shoot a buck, you need to shoulder mount it.
Yep. That's what, yeah. We had
So a lot of people that come up there and they're like, well, I don't know how to be able to tell the difference between 125 and 130-inch buck. And it's like, well, we're not so much going off of, score anymore. It's if you see a buck and you say, I want to put that thing on the wall, I want to, pay the $500-600 to have a shoulder mount,
Mm-hmm.
Shoot it, because you're obviously going to be super jacked about it, right?
Yeah.
And more than likely, someone's not going to see a 6-pointer and say, yeah, I want to put that on the wall. Most people wouldn't do that. So that's what we do with some of our people that hunt that maybe aren't as experienced at aging deer on the hoof.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing that we put in there too, because that seems like we've never, since we implemented that, we haven't had any mistakes. Because you're going to have mistakes. I mean, people are going to make them, and it is what it is. You can't get down on the people. I mean, it's a learning curve for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And once we implemented that, it makes the people that are kind of on the fringe, it makes them think a little more. Do I want to drop $500 on this deer to put him on the wall? Is he big enough? Now, if you have a buck of a lifetime coming out, there ain't anybody out there in the state of Minnesota or in the country that's going to be like, yeah, I don't want to spend the money to mount that. No, you're going to drop the hammer on that thing 10 out of 10 times. You're going to find a way. You're going to find a way how to pay for that because, so.
Yep.
So that's some really interesting stuff there. And you guys, it's fun to hear that it works.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge.
It, like I said, it happens quick.
Yeah,
it does.
Doesn't
take long.
I don't know if I could apply that in my area, unfortunately, because the hunting land that my dad has butts up to 2,000 acres of state land.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes it a little bit more difficult. We get a lot of people that come up from the cities that they come up to hunt. They're there for a weekend and they go home. So that kind of stuff makes it tough, but there's got to be a way to reach out to those guys too. And I do feel like a lot of our neighbors are doing more of a property management type thing. We saw several 2-year-olds this year. Used to see a lot of yearlings. Not really much beyond that, but this year I harvested a 2-year-old, but that's only because I hadn't shot a buck with my bow for 17 years. And one of my brothers shot a buck I believe to be 2. I think they both did. But we had at least 3 or 4 other 2-year-olds running around. So we're hoping. A couple of them were on camera after muzzleloader. Hopefully they make it through the winter.
Yep.
But we got wolves. So we'll see.
But I mean, still, you both are probably in the top 15% of, because I believe probably 80%, at least 85 are 1.5-year-old deer shot in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what, 2.5-year-old, you're happy? Go ahead and smoke it.
Yeah.
You know what?
I wouldn't have shot it with a rifle.
It actually looks like a buck.
Yeah.
Instead of
exactly.
And I wouldn't have shot it with my rifle because I tried it. We've always tried to do some sort of quality deer management on our land, but it was a bow, and it'd been forever. So
awesome.
I had to get her done.
And what I'll tell people too, for a good starting point, just say, okay, we're just not going to shoot any spikes or fork horns or just little basket racks.
Mm-hmm.
We're just not going to shoot those. We're going to shoot the stuff that's a little bigger.
Up. One level.
You're 2.5, you're 3.5, because you pass all those 1.5-year-old bucks. That's the largest number of bucks out there right now, right? So
Absolutely.
you give them the free pass, right? So now next year you have all these 2-year-olds, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, you're going to whack some of them off, right? But then there's going to be, Eric, get your mind out of the gutter. But anyways, yeah. So anyways, some of them are going to make it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then now you got your crop of 3-year-olds, right?
Keep them happy.
And every year that they live, they get smarter. They learn your tactics and they're going to get smarter. So they're going to live longer, hopefully, right?
Well,
so you got to start somewhere.
I've seen dumb yearling bucks and I've seen smart yearling bucks. So I'm not 100% convinced that deer get smarter as they get older.
Well, yeah, we
the
got some
smart
cases.
ones live longer, but I've seen some 3-year-olds because in my dad's hunting preserve, right? I've seen some 3-year-olds. You're like, man, you're so dumb. You wouldn't have made it. You wouldn't have made it past 18 months. There's no way. You're out here at 2:00 in the afternoon. What's wrong with you? Maybe not that extreme, but every deer is different.
Goes by their mom.
Yeah,
You get a smart doe.
We hate the
And she
smart
teaches
does.
that. She teaches her fawn. All right, before we step out, we're looking up here because this guy's had this stand here for the last 9 years, and we just look for him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that fawn looks and yeah.
So here's a question: if you guys have a matriarch doe that's being that way, do you take her out or leave her in the herd? If she blows you every time you're in the stand, if she snorts at you every time she's in the stand, do you take her out or leave her in?
I would shoot her 10 out of 10 times.
I get so mad at them. Like I want to put an arrow right in her forehead as she's just ready to blow, and my dream of mine. But she's honestly probably the one you want to keep around.
Depending on your scenario, yeah, because she's going to keep your
we had a rule.
I could agree with that too. Yeah.
If you have a high predator area, it's better to keep her around.
Yeah. Yep. I like dumb deer though.
Coming out with fawns, and you have timberwolves around, and she walks on your plot with fawns. She carried and survived a harsh winter, whatever, and she just had. I would not shoot her. Like, no, I wouldn't.
Oh yeah. Well, if we had lower deer populations than what we do and stuff like that, definitely I would think about that.
People are listening, Seth.
Oh, I know, but
Kyle would be so jealous.
But I mean, we've had. I mean, that buck that I killed this past fall, that deer was honestly probably. I mean, he was 6.5 years old when I killed him. As a 5.5-year-old deer, that was probably the dumbest 5.5-year-old deer in the entire state.
Yeah, you had him on camera all the time.
And daylight all the time. And and that deer made me like literally want to just quit hunting. Made me think I'm just a crappy hunter because and everybody up there, it made us all feel just stupid because we couldn't kill this deer. And he would do the dumbest things all the time. We actually thought about, we're like, maybe we should hunt this deer like he's a 2-year-old, because you try to hunt him like a mature buck and it's like, he's not there. No, he's standing in the yard, or something like that. I mean, that's how it would be. It was unbelievable. But then I mean, and this deer, and it's not like he wasn't pressured. The deer was shot 3 times before I killed him.
Well, that's why he kept coming in the yard. Like, please finish me, for the love of God.
Finally had to get the boomstick out and finish him off. I mean, he took 3 arrows. I think it was hit with 3 arrows.
He's just out there having so much pain.
Just dumb.
Shoot me already.
But I mean, and that's something too when you start, letting some of these smaller bucks go and you're not pressuring these 1.5, 2.5-year-old, even 3.5 years old deer, the bucks anyways, they really don't fear you as much because they're not pressured, So by the time
So I mean, our land up at north of Hinckley was like 3.5-year-old. You saw like smart.
Yeah.
And then I look at like your video and your stories that I saw, and I'm like, yeah, I think you guys by not pressuring them, it's been you guys.
Yeah, that 193 that I shot, that one 5.5-year-old deer, we would all joke around and say that deer was afraid of the dark because we'd never have nighttime pictures of him. It'd all be during the middle of the day. Like he didn't care. But that's goes back to they're not really harassed until they get around 4 years old. I mean, it was honestly harder to kill a 2-year-old doe than a 3-year-old buck. Way harder
Hmm.
up there. I mean, it still's like that, so, which is nice. I like that. I like dumb bucks, especially when they get big, because it makes me look like I know what I'm doing, when we get one.
Mhm.
So,
It does. It makes you look like a much better hunter. It's like, man, you
oh,
keep shooting all
absolutely.
these deer, but
Yeah. Put me out on some public stuff. Yeah. Geez. Wow. I would just be struggle bus, man.
I don't know. I think some guys are doing management up here. I can't speak for the state land hunters or the city hunters, whatever we want to call them. But there was a 170-inch buck shot within 2 miles of my dad's place this year.
Mm-hmm.
And we had it on camera at least once at my dad's this summer. So there.
I think if everyone knew, like, if you guys went around to the deer camps prior and like, okay, the guys we just talked to, 500 yards down, that's hunting the same section of state land, they're gonna do it.
Mm-hmm.
If they knew, so like Seth, everyone in his area, like it took a little bit, but they all got on board. Where we were at, people, they were like, no, absolutely not. Like, get the hell out of here.
It
But I think
depends if it's the same group that was there when I was 12. Because when I was 12, we just put up a tower stand on the edge of my dad's property, and I could shoot 150 yards on the state land and cover a half mile with a rifle on my dad's land.
Yep.
And 12 years old, I'm in the stand 45 minutes before daybreak, because you get out there before light comes, so the deer don't know you're there, right? Pretty easy. Sun starts coming up. We're almost to legal shooting hours. Here come those guys walking through the woods, flashlights talking the whole way through my shooting lanes on the state land. Well, not shooting lanes, but through the opening on the state land. So frustrating. So I'm sitting there. One of the guys sets up 125 yards away from me. I can see him. I'm in a tower stand, permanent. I can see him. Super frustrating. Little spike buck comes along. He jumps the fence. I don't shoot him because I'm 12 years old. I don't want to shoot a spike buck. I'm waiting for big bucks. He walks 75 yards. The guy drills him, drops him right in front of me. I'm like, okay, well, I let him go. So we go talk to those guys, and they're responding. And we say, hey, just don't shoot. Move your tree stand 75 yards so we can't see you. And this is what we're trying to do for trophy management. At that time, you could shoot 5 does per person and 1 buck in that zone. Doe tags were $2 a piece. At that point,
the good old Lou Cornicelli days.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. This was 15, 16 years ago, so who knows?
Yep, right in the heart of it.
There we go. Deer management tools right there. We'd see 20, 30 deer a night, no problem, no matter where you sat. Then we went through a period after this where you saw 2 deer a season, but that's DNR rules, which we'll get into that in just a few minutes. But we talked to those guys that, hey, we're trying to do some property management, get bigger bucks. They said, nah, we need the meat. You drove 6 hours for a spike buck? Really?
That's remarkable. That's a journey. Huh.
Well,
6
and I
hours
think something
one way, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing we talked about before we got this one is at least myself, I don't know about you guys, that I'm definitely noticing with some of these younger generations, our age and younger, the popularity of passing deer it's on the rise. People are, I think they're kind of getting it because, and I think like social media, as much as I can't stand it sometimes, I think is actually helping this cause, because people are seeing all these other guys shoot these big deer and talk about their trooping, their management practices, and then people like, growing up, we all wanted to be like those people on TV, right? Mm-hmm. Well, if they're preaching it, you're gonna try it. You may not be as extreme as like the Lakoskis and stuff, but you're gonna give it, your best effort, I guess, or at least give it a whirl anyway. So I think overall, that we're heading in the right direction. I think for the most part, a lot of these older generations, our parents, grandparents, and stuff. I mean, back then, like getting their deer for the meat, that was a big deal. I remember growing up, like my parents said, like that's what we lived off of was wild game. Mm-hmm. Not that we all of us, we obviously eat all the deer and stuff that we shoot, but if we don't get a deer at the end of the year, we're not going to starve to death. You know what I mean?
I had 3 brothers. We ate 15 deer a year during that time period. We did. But correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but it feels to me when guys say now, oh, we need the meat, it feels like a way to justify your expensive hobby to your wife.
Yeah.
Okay? Because if you need the meat, you're not wearing, you don't have vortex optics, you don't have excellent rifle and scope. You don't have the top of the line camo. You don't have expensive $2,500 tree stands or
You're
$3,000
not taking
tree
time off
stands.
from work. We're not getting
Yeah.
paid.
Yep.
Yep.
By the time it's all said and done, venison is roughly $20 a pound.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Oh,
the most
absolutely.
expensive meat that you can get.
Mhm.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like my wife, when I met her, she had zero hunting experience. She loves it just as, maybe not, I don't know if anybody loves it as much as me, but she loves doing it. Right.
Mhm.
And so, and now it's even kind of funny with like my mother, she actually is kind of getting into the deer management stuff herself. She's never hunted a day in her life, but she's kind of, she used to give me and my dad hell all the time for spending all this money on food plots and all, you name it. Why do you waste all that money just to shoot a deer? They're standing all over the place. Well, now she's kind of getting involved with, because we name our bucks, people think it's kind of weird, but it's just what we do to keep it straight. When we talk about different deer. So we name our bucks, we put the food plots in, and my mom actually kind of enjoys doing that now. And she even has said to me, like, I can see why, this is more than just hunting to you guys. I mean, this is a passion, not, I wouldn't even call it a hobby. It's a passion, it's
For sure.
it's something that you look forward to doing all the time. And honestly, like, I get more of a kick out of just, going through all the work, planning the food plots, of managing habitats, improving all that, and just getting a trail camera picture of a big buck that you get, and you're just like, that's a win, or just getting a picture of them in front of one of your stands saying, I knew if I put that stand there, he'd walk by,
Mhm.
If you're able to harvest that deer, that's just a bonus. But I mean, I think I get more of it, the most of my kick out of just having the deer there and saying what I'm doing is working, and just seeing them. Like I said, if I end up tagging out on one, well, great. You guys know me. I haven't, that buck I shot this year. I hadn't shot a buck previous 5 seasons in Minnesota before that. Could I have shot lots of bucks? Yeah, but that wasn't top priority for me. It was the right buck and stuff like that. So.
Mhm.
Yeah, I said it before. By far my favorite thing with hunting deer is food plotting.
Yeah.
My favorite thing to do with deer hunting is
Literally
when
reap what
I'm
you
out
sow.
there food plotting. I don't
It's
know. I love
therapeutic.
testing. Huh?
It's therapeutic.
Oh my God. It is totally.
Yep. Have a
And
bad
it's
day at work. Go
like
sit on a
Seth said,
4-wheeler or a tractor and
yeah. And it's the manipulation too of the deer. Like Seth said, like, okay, if I do this here, plant here, edge feather there, they're going to come out right there.
Well,
And then you're there and it's working. You just watch the plan that you've had for the last 4 months. All of a sudden, oh my God, it's working.
Oh yeah.
Here he is.
Well,
And then you completely choke and shoot over him. But
well, I think Jordan, I think honestly, the main reason why you are so hooked on deer hunting now is because you came from a waterfall background. Because that's the same way. I mean, you know what I mean? Like you're setting the spread and trying to make the birds land on the X. I mean, that's your goal.
The only frustration with it really made deer hunting click, especially for me, is you can do a lot of prep with waterfall work, and you got it all pegged out, and then they migrate overnight. They're gone.
Yeah.
Where deer, they don't do that. So you can actually put the work in year over year over year and see stacking benefits and building and a plan actually unfolding as opposed to something you have no control over. So just building your idea, building your plan. It's just reaping what you sow is just so cool. So cool.
Yeah.
And it's worth every penny. But don't say you need the meat to justify your hobby.
No. My favorite one is when they shoot a spike. It's a swamp buck, was never going to amount to anything, or
swamp
big
fix.
body.
Big body.
Yeah,
just
a year and a half year old
chunky-
buck's going to have a bigger body compared to your doe.
Yep.
But that was a big doe too.
Yeah, big doe. No one ever shoots a regular sized doe. I do.
Big doe.
Or a nice doe.
Shot a normal size.
Nice. That's it. It's either nice or big. It's not just a doe.
I just shoot a lot of does. I don't know about you guys, but a lot of the ones I shoot are just does.
Yeah, I didn't shoot a doe this year.
I gotta tell this story real quick. In our family, we have a saying about big doe, because my uncle, you could put him inside the barn, shut doors with no windows, he could unload his gun and not hit a wall. And the one year,
we all have one of those in our group.
Yeah, one year, I don't know, by the grace of God, one of his bullets found this doe, and he got it. And we heard him shoot. All right, we got to go see if Uncle Mark got it. We know he didn't. We come up over the hill, and he's like dancing in the middle of this fire lane, just pumped up. And all of a sudden he sees us. We're up on the hill, and he goes, and we're like, oh my God. Because this was before buck management. He's going, and we're like, holy crap. Like, Uncle Mark got a buck. And he goes, Big Joe.
The international symbol for big doe.
I'm gonna do honestly all my doe videos from now on is
every time someone shoots a doe in our party, it's always this.
oh
Big Joe.
yeah, it's the ears. It's not tines. It's the ears.
Did he explain
like this?
I'm surprised you didn't know that. Come on.
I mean, I was so excited. I was peeing myself a little bit. You know, I was probably 11 or 12. Like, oh my God,
see a buck?
Big doe. And I'm like, idiot.
And it was 70 pounds.
Yeah.
You know, I
But
thought I shot
doe
a really
management
big
is
doe.
important though.
It is. I thought I shot a really big doe one time, and she dressed out 145 pounds. I'm like, oh well, it's all right.
That's a nice doe.
That's a nice doe.
Yeah, but I was used to seeing bucks that are way bigger than that, and it was kind of disappointing when I
Right.
weighed it because I'm like, oh, it should have been like 180. Come on, just as big as the bucks that we had shot that year body wise. I'm like, why is a doe 40 pounds lighter?
Well, go on any Facebook group, and there's guys shooting 180, 200-pound does every year.
Are they
yeah.
doing live
Yeah.
weight or dressed? That's the question.
Well,
They're doing,
the problem is they're not weighing them at all. That's
Oh,
the problem.
yeah.
Or they got weights and deer.
That's like that fishing competition.
Yeah. No, that is one thing though that we started doing though. We weigh every deer we shoot on our farm, just
That's cool.
out of curiosity, just to see. I mean, one of our neighbors, he kind of turned me onto it because he's like obsessed with it. It's just the point where it's like you shoot a deer and you don't have it out of the woods yet. Dude, what it away? What it away? What it away? I'm like, I don't know. I don't have it back in the cabin yet.
It puts it into perspective for you too.
It
Like,
does.
you do it enough.
Mhm.
Mature doe, 120, 120 pounds, really.
Yeah.
A mature doe. A big doe, 140, 160 is insane.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think
I
the
mean, you can
biggest
get them
one we've ever shot off our farm was right at 160, and that was a
big.
giant size doe.
Yeah, that was my biggest, was 160, and I was like,
Chunky
she was
goats.
alone when I shot her, and I couldn't realize why I was struggling getting her on the four-wheeler. And I was like, what the heck? And then we put the scale on. I was like, oh, I'm not a wimp. Well, I am, but shut up, Jordan. But it puts it into perspective because you're always like, oh, this buck's 200 pounds. No, it's a 150-pound, 2.5-year-old. Respectable deer, good for you. But, you know, our 3.5-year-olds up north were anywhere from 185, 190, 220 was our 4.5 and older up there.
Dressed.
Like, we got to know our deer herd.
Yeah. The biggest we've had dressed, granted, in the farm, it's different. But we had gotten a hold of some really big body bloodlines. We had one that we swear weighs 420 pounds live weight. We never did weigh him dressed in his prime. At 13, he weighed 280 dressed in September.
Wow.
But we had
That's a lot of chili.
yeah.
And some sloppy joes.
And that wasn't in his prime. So we figure November at 5 years old, 400 plus, probably not too far off. But we had one that was 3 years old, dressed out at, what was it? He was 360 pounds live weight, and he dressed out at 323.
Wow.
And you guys are, that's all genetics.
Genetics have a lot to do with it, because you can buy, as a deer farmer, we can buy Texas bloodlines that are, semen off of Texas bucks that are going to be 120 pounds mature. But you get up into Canada, you see 450-pound deer all the time. And I think the state record for Minnesota back in like the 20s, I may have to Google this again, is like 520 pounds. Live weight for a whitetail. They get big, man. They get bigger than people think. So
And see, that's what, like, you were talking about the antlers before. You blew my mind with that. Like how you said, elk and everything have antlers a third the size of the animal, and
It makes sense.
They have a
doesn't
lot
it?
more potential than we give them. I even give them credit for.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think I'm crazy. I think it makes sense. Too bad there's no real way to prove it, but also from the fact that when we're breeding the way we do as a deer farmer, we're not adding material. Everybody's like, oh, well, you're splicing the genes together and you're doing this, that, and the other thing. No, it's all material that's there. It's all within the animal. We didn't add anything. You know, if you wanted to create a basketball team, and if you could ethically breed humans, which you can't, you know, but you wouldn't pick somebody from Norway that's 5'2", like my
Right.
mom's family. You'd pick somebody from, you know, a tribe in Africa that's 6'7", 7'2". If you if
Yep.
you want to have a basketball team, right?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
they're all.
So you guys are cloning people. Did you clone Eminem?
No.
I read that.
Did you really? Eminem's been cloned.
Oh, they all
A
have.
lot of people have been cloned.
I go down some pretty dark rabbit holes when I've been drinking.
There's one that I've heard, and we're gonna go off topic here for just a second, but I can't remember her name now. There's one singer that everybody supposedly she got sick, and now it's just somebody else lip syncing all her songs. It's not actually her.
Adele,
No, before that, older than
Beyonce?
Adele. No,
Celine
Oh,
Dion,
J-Lo.
nope, I can't remember her name, and it's killing me.
Down, Eric,
It's
down.
killing me.
Jessica Simpson,
No, it's
Ashley Simpson,
no.
What's she
Britney
look
Spears,
I
Christina
don't
Aguilera.
know. I can't remember her name, but anyway,
Eric
back on
was
track.
on a roll there.
Yeah, I don't even know that many female singers. Jeepers.
I do.
He writes some letters every day.
So should we take the next 15 minutes or so and talk about what management practices we'd like to see the state implement? Because the management
15
practices,
minutes?
well, unless you guys want to do a third podcast tonight, or we do another one in a couple of weeks, or
Eric's
something.
old.
I'll
It's
try
way
not
past
to go on a
bedtime already.
rant.
It's just tough, but I love what you guys are doing from a management perspective. It's working. You guys are getting big deer. But like I said, it sucks that it has to start at a local level. Why can't the state do something?
Because it's
So-
political.
Yeah.
Well, can it? I'll play the game of. I won't go on a rant. I'll make it quick. I would like to see the state allow deer numbers to be like Wisconsin's deer numbers, what they allow for. If you
Southern Wisconsin.
no, all of Wisconsin, the way they allow it. Like you went right across the river from our hunting land in East Central, and we were considered. I would talk with our big game manager in the area, and well, he would say, "Well, we're at 20 deer per square mile. Well, that's not a lot of deer, you know." And he's like, "Well, we're putting in for roads and lakes and all that, so it condenses them down." I'm like, "Oh my god, like really?" You go across the river, and they're at 40 deer per square mile, and you couldn't get a doe tag, or you only got one doe tag in that area of Wisconsin. And I'm like, now you're giving us 5-7 tags, whatever, to lower our population. And we have 20, you're saying 20, but there's not a chance in hell we were at 20. Now, if you go back in the mid to late 90s and everyone's like, oh, he's bringing up the deer herd. Yeah, I am, because back then we had a lot of deer. You would go out, you would see deer. It was fun hunting. But then everyone thought, well, they needed to be lower. They need to be, why? We were getting along just fine with those deer numbers. And then they're, oh, well, we have a lot of people and there's collisions. You ever been to southern Wisconsin? Those deer numbers,
Anywhere in Wisconsin.
140 deer per square mile in some of those zones down there by Madison. They're just as populated. 94 is insane. There's a lot of dead deer on the road. Absolutely. But you go down there, they won't shoot a small buck because they see 40 deer or whatever. And you want to talk about habitat. Minnesota's habitat, second to none. We have harsher winters. Pretty sure God made deer able to survive a winter.
I can do a whole podcast on that. It's
Like,
incredible.
They're able to survive it. Okay. It's not our winters. You go to Missouri, southern Iowa, our habitat, tenfold. 80% of a deer's diet is woody browse, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's woods all over Minnesota, but we don't got no deer because, well, we got to keep the numbers low. For
Mhm.
what reason? You know, like
Well,
I'm
and
done.
it's weird with that because like a lot of non-hunters, they love to see deer, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So where's the outrage with them saying, why are you shooting all these deer? You don't hear nothing. Right?
Let's team up with PETA on this one. I would in a heartbeat. I would.
Yeah. I personally don't think that there's anywhere. I mean, I would like to see it maybe not statewide, but the areas where you can shoot a pile of deer. I think you should be able to shoot 2 deer, your buck and a doe.
And get rid of cross tagging.
Oh, well, I don't have yeah, I shouldn't say that. I mean, me personally, I don't have a problem with cross tagging antlerless deer, but the problem is then if I'm against cross tagging antlered deer, it may be kind of hypocritical. So I would be okay with not cross tagging anything. I would be okay.
I don't like cross tagging. Sorry.
Yeah. No,
I have a
I don't
love-hate
either.
relationship with it. I understand it, and it can be fun.
Yep.
But if your area can't support the deer herd, that's just screwed up anyway.
Yeah, we can bring it back after we have the numbers. That's why I'm against, I said it before, APRs. I'm against them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we would never need them if we had deer numbers. If you went out and saw deer, you wouldn't shoot the first thing because you're not going out there going, man, I hope I see a deer. You're going out there going, man, I hope I see the right deer.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I want meat in the freezer, I can shoot one of the 20 does that are going to walk by me.
Which brings me to this thought process, like we talked about in pre-show a little bit. North Dakota, Montana, they have tag limits for how many tags they'll sell in a specific area. And those tags change every year depending on the area. Okay, with Minnesota having probably, I think, either the highest, if not one of the top 5 DNR budgets in the United States. We've done a podcast about that. We have a crazy high budget. You're telling me they can't hire people to be like, oh, in this area we should have 500 does harvested and $200. That's all that should be harvested in this area. You're telling me we can't do that? Why can't we do that? Because if we did that, we could maintain the population numbers where the state wants them and just not sell so many tags. Did you know in Minnesota, the deer population currently sits right around 1 million throughout the whole state, which is actually up from like 10 years ago. I think 2016, it's that 15 area. We were sitting about 600,000.
It's 14 was like it
was like 600,000 or less. They sold 800,000 tags in Minnesota this year for 1 million deer, and they plan on only 30% of people being successful. That's their plan. So this is just a huge money grab by the Minnesota DNR.
Yes.
Let's just sell as many tags as possible, or let's do this. Let's limit how many tags we sell, provide a better hunting experience, and raise the price of those tags. If you want to hunt in Minnesota from North Dakota, it's $110. And it's over the counter. If I want to go hunt in North Dakota, which I haven't, but you guys have hunted out of state a little bit, what does it cost?
It's like 260. I think it's like 260 now. Yeah.
North Dakota bow tag is like $280.
Is it 280 now? Yeah, it goes up a little bit.
$75 plus $5 for something or another, but 280-ish. Yep.
Why is
Minnesota
so screwed up?
Well, and honestly, like I feel like Jordan, out of all of us, your area is probably seeing the biggest like feast of famine in the last couple of years with numbers. And
I can't keep my head straight on what their plan is and what they're trying to do to accomplish it. I've got a lot of emails, and I talk with what do they call the deer planner for our zone area? Yeah. Whatever. He's actually, he responds to me and puts up with me, so I give him credit for that. But our area, well, once upon a time, our previous area is no longer merged with another one, but in consecutive years, we went from doe lottery to managed to 3 deer zone, and then right into early antlerless, like all in consecutive years. So went from trying to get a doe tag to now you could, at that point, the first year we could shoot up to 8 in 4 or 5 years. And I went to, try to give them credit because they're supposed to be the smart people, right? But we went to a deer planning meeting in Alexandria, and one of the biggest things from the hunter's perspective, now there's hunters there, there's farmers there, there's a bunch of different people there at these meetings that chime in and give their 2 cents. A lot of people wanted smaller areas, county by county or smaller sample sizes.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that they did, they got rid of 276, went to 277, which is, I don't know, how far is it from Starbuck, Minnesota to Dassel, Minnesota?
It's probably one of the. It's actually, I think it's probably one of the biggest zones or areas
120 miles
in the southern half of the state.
120 miles. You've got the same rules and the same, quotas or whatever. And then I'm on the very far west side of it. So that first year that we could shoot 8 total, if you took advantage of the early antlerless and the 3 deer during the regular season, it's 8 total. 2 miles from where I hunt majority of my time. Across the ditch, you had to do a lottery for a doe tag.
Oh.
So 2 miles away, you could maybe shoot 1. You go in the other ditch, you can shoot 8. And I mean, there's got to be a line of transition somewhere, but you think there'd be a little bit more of a buffer from going from the maximum to the minimum. And then getting into, we could talk all night about, their goal, and I'm going off their goal, is to lower the deer population in that area by having that many tags, right? But then they got that firearm season sitting that first weekend in November when the young bucks are their most susceptible to getting shot. They're the dumbest deer on the planet for 7 days straight, and these come walking by back and forth, and they have no prayer. And shooting a buck doesn't lower the population, so it's just kind of a head scratcher as to how they have it set up the way they do to try to accomplish what they say they're trying to do. If that makes sense, it just makes no sense. If you're trying to lower the population, you do earn a buck lottery because you want does gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you have that gun season sitting there, right, and then it's just.
Well, and I don't get why it's such a big deal to have the gun season, when it is, because how many times now do you hear people complaining about, oh, it's 60 degrees during firearm opener, it's
It
like
always used to be
t-shirt
cold.
weather, and it's like, well, let's push it back 2 weeks. Well, we can't do that. It's got to be the first. Yeah,
It's always been this way.
But it hasn't. It hasn't. In the 70s, it was pushed back 2 weeks.
Yep.
Not tradition. And I call BS on anybody who says it's too dang cold to hunt in 2 weeks later weather, because guess what? 95% of hunters who own their own land have at least 1, if not 5, heated tree stands. And Wisconsin is 2 weeks later than us. And Minnesota as a state, do we want to say, Wisconsin, you guys are so much tougher than us? We just can't handle
That's a great
65
argument.
degrees. I've seen mosquitoes in rifle season. Push it back. Because what happens too, and this pisses me off, people in the Twin Cities come up north to hunt. Everybody does it. You can't hardly drive on Highway 10 during that time of week. Don't even try. Forget it. They shoot a deer. It's 65 to 85 degrees out, and they drive it home on the tailgate of their pickup 6 hours, throw the whole thing away.
And the rack's propped up over the box, that little 6-point rack.
They throw the whole deer away because it's too dang hot. Let's push it back 2 weeks. And I've said this before on this podcast.
And shorten it.
That will allow the bucks to fight for the right to breed the does and will overall help our herd with the least amount of change. That is the smallest change we can make to help the whitetail deer herd in Minnesota. But it's never going to happen.
And it should be 9 days statewide. I mean, why is in northern zone 1 this is the lowest deer numbers in the state? Why are we hunting them another week? Why?
Because
that's where our property was.
Should be the opposite, right?
That's where our property was. And third weekend, we had everyone from zone 2 and
absolutely. Yeah. You're not limited anymore.
Yep. Well, then they go up to, and we had a buddy that would come up third weekend because his hunting's done. He's going to come on up. Mm-hmm. So I mean, we did it too. We're guilty of it.
People have the audacity.
But the one thing people don't understand, if you pushed it back and there's that much less pressure during peak breeding, the majority of your fawns are all going to drop at one time. And what happens when there's an influx of them? More survive.
Right.
When they're dropped out and you have a second rut and a third rut, now they're spread out. Well, the bear, the wolf, the coyote, the bobcat, the cougar, now they're spread out. It's easier, but you get a massive drop at one time.
So nature's supposed to work.
That, and deer are so reliant on weather. A newborn fawn, coming from a guy who's bottle fed personally well over 100, they are the easiest thing on the planet to kill. They are. They will die at the drop of a hat. If a fawn is born in a mud puddle that's 2 inches deep, it will drown. It will lay down and drown. Okay? They're stupid. If it's born on the edge of a black field in July because its mom was bred late and it lays down, it will die of heat stroke. It'll lay there until it cooks. Fawns are stupid. Whitetail fawns are meant to be born in a specific 2-week window. In Minnesota, where we have a harsh climate, this is not true for Arkansas, for Missouri. If I understand Arkansas correctly, they have fawns born year round. It's weird down there. They have different stuff
Oh,
going on.
You can go
If-
county to county and it's different.
Yep. Up here,
Yeah.
if we have a fawn born, typically May 20th is the earliest we can keep a fawn alive. And that's early. We like them to be born like May 25th to like June 5th. It's the best 10-day window. If we have a fawn born May 13th, it's probably not going to survive. We get 1 35-degree rain, that fawn's dead. Sorry, forget it. Done. If it's born too late, now they go into harsh Minnesota winters at 35 pounds.
Mhm.
Have you guys ever seen a fawn with a short tail or short ears?
So no,
Yeah.
but
Froze off.
so you're talking about late fawns like that. Jordan knows where I'm gonna go with this.
Yes. The weirdest thing ever.
We had a fawn, and I ain't kidding you. This thing was born beginning of October. Okay, it held its
Oh,
spots. It's held its spots all through the winter, and I got pictures of it in April with spots still. I had it come by me, and I thought there was a little fox following the doe through the. I'm like, what is it? It's a little spotted fawn, and I'm like, there is no. We actually honestly talked amongst all our neighbors, like, should you,
shoot it?
just
Yeah.
shoot it, just because we don't want it to think that, because there's no way it's going to make it. We don't want it to suffer.
Mhm.
Damn thing made it. It made it. You know?
So I'm guessing at that time your predator numbers were not that high because he shouldn't have made it, and also you guys have adequate food.
Yeah, and I don't know. Yeah, and honestly, like, what kept that deer alive is, I mean, a lot of us up there, we feed after the season closes. We'll feed all winter, and that did. I mean, that deer lived in our bird feeder and our deer feeder right in the yard, and that's what kept it alive. But
deer will freeze to death before they starve to death.
Yeah,
You told me that one time.
Yep,
And
they're
that
rumen. If they don't have food in their stomach, they freeze to death. Deer do not starve to death in the winter; they freeze. That ruminating action, chewing their cud, keeps them warm. And I mean, that's how horses get by. That's how cows get by all winter. I mean, my cow's out 40 below. What are they doing? They're chewing their cud. They're eating hay. They're just chewing. So the deer do. They're doing the exact same thing because there's no other way to keep themselves warm when they have those spindly little legs. They gotta keep chewing. Go look at a deer bed and see how much they melt down into the ice.
Yeah.
Deer, you gotta think they just gotta be miserable. But that's why woody browse actually works well for deer. Because it's so much fiber, it's so much heat. Protein helps too, though. Adding in.
Well, and Dylan, where you tried to talk about the youth hunt, people are so against that, and there's a lot of hunters that I know that I think are really good hunters, and their strategies behind deer management and stuff are really smart, but they cannot stand that youth season, and I'm like, and I see where they're coming from on some of the issues of that, but realistically, we got to look at it this way. I would make a few changes with that. I'm all for the youth hunt, but I also don't think a 17-year-old kid needs to be running around with a rifle and his buddies doing deer drives in October. I'd like to personally see the youth season be for ages like 12 and under and have no minimum on the bottom like Wisconsin has. You know what I mean? Because at 5 years old, could I have went out and shot a deer with a rifle? Absolutely. We all could have, right?
Some of us did.
Minnesota, I know, but in Minnesota, legally, we can't, we're not given that chance, right? And I feel like if we can instill and have a young kid, have success at a young age, there's a better chance that he's going to grow up and want to be a hunter and contribute. Because, I mean, are you seeing our deer hunting numbers decline every year? I mean, there's less and less kids getting into it. And so the youth hunt is good for that, but I think we should structure more on the younger kids. You know what I mean? Because if you're 12 and over, I mean, we all did it.
He froze again. He'll come back around. Just wait for
right?
it.
Was I breaking up? Oh,
yeah.
But when we were all 12 years old, right? We all went out with everybody with the hunting party and did it. We're all still here, right? Yeah. I think a lot of kids these days are a little softer than we were, right? I mean, it goes back to we all got heated blinds. I have a lot of them. I personally, I love sitting in them now. But you know what? I mean, it can be done, and I think we can get some of these kids out at a younger age is huge. With the turkey hunting, there's no minimum age, and Eric's been able to get his kids on turkeys. What did Holden shoot his first one? What is he, 5?
5.
5.
5 years old.
I mean,
that's
So
kind of
great.
what it boils down to. And if you listen to the first episode with these guys, you guys all have your kids active in hunting. Well, not Seth yet because yours aren't old enough, but
mhm.
you got your kids active in hunting outdoors. And that's two of the three favorite hunting stories had to do with kids.
Mm-hmm.
Hunter recruitment's at an all-time low, and it has been for years. So the state of Minnesota needs to do something to encourage that. The youth season helps, but they're doing it wrong. I believe there can be made changes. I agree. I think it's a good thing to have, but there's got to be better ways to do it. And personally, I think if you're sitting and you see deer, whether you shoot them or not, you're having more fun than if you're not seeing deer.
Absolutely.
No kidding.
So why don't we shoot some dang wolves, raise the population of whitetail a little bit,
Amen.
and have fun and get kids involved in it? Because if I go sit, if
You gotta
I was
make it
12 years
fun.
old, if I sat and I'm freezing my butt off, and I don't see any deer, I don't want to go again. But if I can sit there and be like, wow, there's 12 deer out in the food plot, and I can just stare at them for hours, oh, that's a much better experience.
Like fishing, you don't take your kid out walleye fishing the first time. You take them for sunfish off the dock.
Mm-hmm.
They want action.
Yep. Anything where they're going to catch something right away. So
Yep.
we have no control over the state of Minnesota, but we do have control over our own circles. So
Absolutely.
if you're listening to this, take a kid hunting if you know a kid. I mean, with their parents' permission, everything first, but
Don't just abduct them.
take a willing child hunting.
Let me use your tag here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
not
doing
for
your-
that purpose. Don't do it wrong.
Right.
I will say.
No, all my
Go
my
ahead.
two nieces and my nephew, they all shot their first deer with me. Like I would much rather take even a newbie, a 50-year-old guy or girl that's never hunted before.
Mm-hmm.
I love doing that. Like just seeing that excitement and like teaching them. I love it.
Yeah. Oh, guiding hunts has been one of my favorite experiences of my life, and I've guided a lot of hunts. Yeah, it's in a hunting reserve, but just the excitement of seeing somebody get that excited, it's more fun than hunting.
Mm-hmm.
So do yourself a favor, take somebody else hunting.
Absolutely.
For sure.
And the only way you said it, the only way we're going to change anything, I don't think we're going to change anything with the heads of the DNR or how they want to do what they want to do. It's got to be groups, your local area, your guys, because they can give you all the tags in the world, but if everyone's in agreement, we don't have the numbers, don't shoot the does or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they can't make you shoot them. Now, granted, they can go and bait them and shoot them from a helicopter and crap like that, but
that's another podcast yet. But we are running at about an hour and 10 minutes, which is almost up there with the longest. I think this might be the longest podcast we've done. So if you've made it this far, we appreciate it. I think we're gonna have you guys back. I think Kyle would love to pick your brains too. So we're gonna log off for the night here. Finishing note: take somebody hunting. Come on, just do it. It's easy. No, it's not easy, but it's worth it. So
worth it.
Every second you spend with somebody in a tree stand is worth it. So you can find the guys here at Haunted Outdoors on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. You can find Lessons of the Woods by 10 Point Whitetails at 10 Point Whitetails on Facebook or YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, or you can find Lessons of the Woods on your favorite podcast apps, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, all that good stuff. New episodes drop every Friday at 7 p.m. unless something happens and we don't get to record. But yeah, find us where you found us, and we'll see you guys next time.